So cover crops ahead of corn are a little bit trickier given our cropping systems, the herbicides we use, the climate, the weather, the growing season we have for our cover crops. The cereal grasses are what really work well for us. So we hear about cereal rye in front of soybeans all the time, right? But however, cereal rye, when used ahead of corn, can cause some issues because it's, number one, a grass, and corn is also a grass. So that's one big red flag when we're paired up similar families from cover crops to the cash crop. That's immediately something that we got to stop and be concerned about. Cereal rye will also take up a lot of nitrogen in the soil if we don't get an early termination. It can also have a negative allelopathic effect on corn when we're planting it. So we can certainly plant cereal rye ahead of corn. We have to follow some important management considerations that probably a little more than we want to get into at this moment. But what we've been looking for a lot of farmers to be successful with cover crops ahead of corn is using barley, which is another cereal grain. It is another grass. The downside is it is not as winter hardy as cereal rye, so you're not going to get that 100% overwintering year after year. It needs to be planted a little earlier in the year to get good overwintering. But the positive side is it just does not have the same growth characteristics as cereal rye. It'll remain a lot shorter to the ground. Even if you don't get that early termination, the maximum growth won't be like those big 6-foot tall cereal rye fields. The barley will be oftentimes around 24 inches to 3 foot. And that's just even if we don't get it terminated because of a really wet spring. It's also slower to get going in the springtime, which opens up our window for a timely termination. When we're working ahead of corn, generally we'd like to see the cover crop, if it's a cereal such as rye, barley, wheat, triticale, we'd like to see it terminated in that 8 to 12 inch stage. We don't want it to get very large on us so we don't have problems. And the advantage of barley is that it'll be slower than the rest of those to get going in the springtime, so we can have a better window to get out there and get it terminated properly. A lot of the good successes is we would really like to have other options for cover crops than our cereals all the time. Not that they have good attributes to them, there's reasons for them. But when we look at soil health in particular, or maybe even the potential to produce nitrogen ahead of a corn crop, we really want to be able to look at things like some legumes, some brassicas, annual ryegrass, some of those other species that are more difficult to get established. And one of the biggest things is they have to be established earlier in the year. So waiting till after harvest can be a problem. So I guess one of the biggest successes for that would be going back to like 2012 when we had really good rains as a result of a hurricane. Farmers all across the state, anybody who did aerial applications, doing those seedings before the cover crop was off, or before the cash crop was off rather, had really good success. They took off great. Personally, the field that we're actually behind that year, we applied with some annual ryegrass and radishes, and were able to graze our livestock on that throughout the winter. We had excellent growth. 2012 was a very dry year, so forage was in short supply, and being able to get that cover crop out there and then be able to graze our livestock on it was probably a really huge success for us in that year in particular, because we flipped from that dry year with little forage for the cattle to being able to get that cover crop out there and get a benefit out of that. As far as challenges go, obviously 2019 is something that a lot of us will still look back on. For many years when our cover crops, if you had them, there was just no opportunity to get them terminated. So we were all dealing with those big 5-6 foot tall cereal rye fields if you had that out there ahead of soybeans. And I think we all kind of had enough background knowledge that we managed them fairly well. They weren't train wrecks or disasters. Nonetheless, we did see some probably reduced yields from those situations in that year. But it was a challenging year, but one that I think a lot of people learned from.